just music technique, right? There's a certain sequence of music theory that we learn. And I teach a certain course that I've just learned over the years. I kind of added my own thing to it. But every book on theory and technique is always the same as far as the sequence, how you learn it, just like a language. And so I'll often compare, a lot of times I'll compare speaking a language, learning a language to learning music. It's the same. But learning music is a much easier language to learn, in a way, in some ways. So, first thing we learn, first of all, think of it as like a pyramid of learning. So, down at the bottom, we have like circle of fifths. Circle of fifths, which leads us to scales, which leads us to, so circle of fifths, we have scales, we have intervals, we have triads, we have four-part chords, and then all this stuff at top is like all the fun, interesting stuff. And so why I kind of shape it as a pyramid is because the stuff on the bottom is the longest learning curve, right? It's sort of the easiest learning curve, the easiest to understand in a way, but it takes the longest time to get this under your fingers, to really, really know it inside and out. And there's different levels of knowing it. So, but once you get to know these things, everything up here gets much, much easier. The whole point is to learn everything in every key. And then on piano, that can be pretty time consuming because every key looks a little bit different, right? C looks different from F sharp in some ways it doesn't though. For example, when I went to college, there was a piano player there. He was a blind guy, couldn't see at all. And he developed perfect pitch. So, have you ever met anyone with perfect pitch?
Yep.
Do you guys know what perfect pitch is? Perfect pitch? It's when, it's like the carpet's red. And we all know it's red, and we can see it's red, and there's no real argument about that, right? Perfect pitch is when someone could hear a note, like, this is A flat, like they can see the color red. They know it's A flat. It's just A flat, I hear it. A flat, and they can instantly tell you what it is. So what most people have, it's really rare, but we're all actually born with perfect pitch, as it turns out. And we use perfect pitch as babies to like hear a mother's voice and to distinguish different tones and things. So you can actually train a baby up until about the age of 8 to 12 to keep it. And you can teach them how to do that. And some people just naturally keep that ability. But the rest of us, as we learn to speak our language, that ability starts to fade. But there is a way to keep it. But it's really rare, and I've seen it only a couple times, and it's amazing. But my point is, with the story, is this blind piano player guy, he was like the best piano player in school, by far. It's really, really good. He could say, oh, we're playing the song in C, and someone says, oh, you know, that's a little bit low for me, female vocalist or whatever. Can we play that in E flat? He says, okay, sure. And he wouldn't have any problem transposing to a different key, because he wasn't seeing the piano as black and white keys. He didn't see the C scale as different from the F sharp scale. Well, he couldn't see anything, but he felt around on the piano and he played as if like a guitar player. And so on a guitar, there's no black and white keys. It's just like line, line, line. So a guitar is like the piano if it was all white keys, right? If we're all white keys and no black keys, every scale would look exactly the same. C, D would just be like, right? They'd all be the same. Just like a guitar. Guitar, if you're playing with a guitar player, they'll play a G scale, okay, and they'll have a pattern for it, look a certain shape. Say, okay, can we play an F sharp scale? Sure. And they just move one fret down, and then we have the F sharp, and they play the exact same shape. So for guitar players, it's very easy for them to transpose. Piano's a little bit different, right? But that being said, this blind piano player that I knew looked at it like a guitar and had easy time transposing. So anyways, scales, we're going to really focus on this, and if it's kind of too easy for you, hopefully I can fill in some gaps, different way of looking at it. But I can kind of come over and sort of guiding you. You mentioned modes. I love studying the modes, they're really interesting. But this takes a while, intervals, and as we go, after 4-part chords, we start to go into like improv sort of stuff. And then we kind of learn the modes. There's so many scales to learn. We learn the chord-scale relationship. So that means with every chord, like a C major 7 or C7 or D minor 7, there's a corresponding scale that goes with it. So if I play D minor 7, and I know there's a scale I can play with that. Or C7. C7 has a corresponding scale that goes with that. Now, certain chords have more than one scale. Most chords do. Scales like the C7 actually have a whole bunch of scales you can play with it. I'm not sure offhand, but there's C mixolydian, there's C, let's see, diminished, there is C whole tone, there's a whole bunch. So once you learn all that, it's getting faster and faster to learn these things because this is all learned. It's like, oh, if I say, oh, can you play this D Dorian or C sharp Dorian or mixolydian or whatever, all these modes, you'll be able to calculate it fast once you know this. But this, like I said, this takes a while. But everything gets more interesting and faster to learn as you go higher and higher. But yeah, I love music theory. It's very interesting. I like to teach in a way where I minimalize the memorization of music, because sometimes you can get overwhelmed with thinking that music has a lot of rote memory. So rote memory is just, I think of music not like a history class. You don't have to memorize names and dates, times and places, by just pure rote memory. It's actually more like a math class. So I can teach you a simple formula, and you can apply it to many, many things, right? So reduce the memorization, because it doesn't have to be that way. Okay, so today is the circle of fifths, and the circle of fifths is the most important thing you'll ever learn in music. Everything pertains to fifths. And I'll show you some examples. Circle, oops. Circle of fifths. Okay, so does everybody have blank paper or manuscript paper? Yeah? Do you guys have manuscript paper? I have some, if you don't. So who doesn't have any? Yeah? Do you have some?
Okay.
Yeah? Need some?
No.
Oh, you got it. You got it there? Yeah. Here you go. You got it? Nice. All right. So let's draw the circle of fifths out. Now don't draw it on the staff paper because it's going to be hard to see. So find turn that piece of paper over, or just find a piece of blank paper in your booklet. We'll do this. So, who has never heard of the circle of fifths before, ever? Everybody's heard it? Okay, so let's review. This is something that needs to be memorized, but I like to use maybe the word internalize, because memorizing seems so daunting. Because you don't need to memorize. Memorizing just makes it go faster, because you can always figure it out. So I like to say, like I said, music is more like a math class. And it's more like a 3rd grade math class, maybe 4th, 5th grade at the most. So all you have to learn in music is the alphabet from A to G, right? And how to count to 12, pretty much, right? A, B, C, D, E, F, G, you get the flats and sharps, that's it for the alphabet, and some basic math. And so we're going to be focusing on fifths. So before I kind of go into this, I'm going to show you some examples. And so you should always ask why we're learning something. Do you remember like in school, when you take a math class and the teacher's like, okay, we're going to be learning about this and this and that. Like, when am I ever going to use this? I don't understand the whole, what's the point? So I've always asked that in music. Why learn this? What's the point of learning scales? What's the point of learning intervals? I just want to play music. I just want to write some songs. So if you ever have that urge to understand why we're learning a certain thing, please ask. I'll definitely explain why. So first of all, circle of fifths. The interval of a fifth is probably the most important interval in music. A lot of songs happen to be going down in fifths. What I mean by that is chord progressions. Okay, so, yeah, like I said, this can all be figured out if you can count to 5. And if you know the first 7 letters of the alphabet. It's as simple as that. So, for example, if I have the letter A, and I want to go down 5.
C.
Yeah, D, right? So A, G, F, E, D. We're going this. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Right, so you have A, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And it goes down to D. Okay, D down 5.
G.
Yeah. Oops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It'd be G. Okay, G down 5.
C.
C. And when I'm doing this, you always have to count the starting point as 1. You're thinking, well, that's obvious. Not so obvious in other circumstances, you'll see. So just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. C. C down 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Good. F. And so on and so on. Now, I chose these. This reminds me of the song. So, here's an old jazz song. See if you can tell me what it is. Yeah. Okay, Fly Me to the Moon. Okay, and I have another interesting example after this, but look up here. It might be kind of hard to see the keys. I'm going to show you what the root movement of this song is. What I mean by root movement is if you have a chord like A minor, the root is A. Okay, so it doesn't matter if it's A minor or A major or whatever. We're just thinking of the single note A. So the first chord is A minor. The next chord is D minor. The next chord is G7. The next chord is C, major 7. So right here, D, 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 G, 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 C, 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 goes down again to F, and then breaks the cycle, goes to B, and then from B it goes down again. So what's down a fifth from B? E, right? The whole song, down the fifths, right? The movement of fifths is a really powerful one. Okay, so here it is. Here, down fifth, all down fifth, down fifth, down fifth. Okay. Now, I stumbled upon this one time when I was playing a wedding. We played that song, and then shortly after, we played this song. Yeah, right? Do you guys know the song? Yes, maybe? I Will Survive, right? Went from jazz to disco. It's exactly the same chord progressions, identical. A minor 7, D minor 7. And so, let's see, I can attempt to maybe play, mash them up. Okay, so. Jazzy, I will survive. So they're exactly the same. They're all going down in fifths. Now, it's really apparent, especially in classical and jazz. You can show me any example, open up a book, and I'll show you constant examples of going down in fifths. Okay. The sound of 5 to 1 was kind of first used in classical music. Mozart and those guys. That's the sound of this. Right? 5, 1, 5, 1, 5, 1, 5, 5, 5. What can you tell me about that sound? Why do you think it's cycle of fifths is important? There's many different reasons. It actually goes into the side physics. There's actually physics involved. But music is all about tension and release, just like life, right? Just like many examples. Tension and release. So if you watch a movie, there's always tension and release. If there's not, it's boring. We live in the universe of the relative, right? So there's always going to be black and white, dark and light. Tension and release. Tension. So, all right. So that leads me to this circle of fifths. Okay, so just gonna erase this. Get some away. Now, learning the circle of fifths or learning any interval and how it works is going to help with many things, understanding music better, which leads us into things like if you can look at a song, you can analyze it. And if you see, for example, some fifths in there, it's a way to memorize, right? So for those two songs, I know my circle of fifths really well. You know, I know the chords that work within the scale and this and that, but just the fifths alone, I could get everybody to memorize that song within like 5-10 minutes. You'll know it. Just by, not rote memory, by counting down 5. Okay? Just like that. So, very important. So, what I'm going to get you to do is draw this. I'm going to get you to draw it in a certain way. So, I want you to start thinking of this as a clock. Okay? C is at 12 o'clock. Okay, so C is at 12 o'clock. Now, the circle of fifths gives us key signatures. That's one thing of many that it gives us. So, like this. The first thing you do is draw the big circle. Draw 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and 9 o'clock. All right. So then I have 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10, and 11. Okay, so how many notes are in a scale?
8.
Close.
Oh, 12, if you want to.
Close. You're on the right track. Maybe the question is, how many different notes are there?
Oh, in a scale, just in a measure scale, 7?
Yeah. So without the octave, it's 7 different notes. So that means that there has to be a scale that has 0 sharps and flats, and there has to be one that has all 7. That's the way it goes. Makes sense, right? C has 0, and there's also one that has all 7. So I'm going to put a box beside this, and put 0, nothing. So I'm going to go all the way around. So any guesses, or maybe you know, of what scale has 7 sharps in it?
Should I be silent?
Yeah, does anybody know here?
B major.
That's 5.
Close. Yeah. What is it?
You want me to say?
Yeah.
C sharp?
C sharp. It's interesting. Okay, so C sharp. Now, I'm going to go the other way. These scales have sharps in it. These ones have flats. Okay. So we must conclude that there must be a scale that has all 7 flats. We go all the way over here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I think one of you guys can get this for sure, if I phrase my question right. If we have C has 0, C sharp has 7, what would have 7 flats? What do you think? What letter do you think it is? Do you see a pattern? What do you think? Ruby, what do you think?
I don't know.
I can get you to guess. So, C has 0. As it turns out, C has 7 sharps. And what letter do you think has 7 flats?
C.
C. Yeah. Right. It's a good way to remember this.
You
C
don't
flat.
don't usually use that C flat though. Would be
Yeah.
considered more of a B scale.
That's right. Exactly. So we have C flat, and we have C sharp. So a good way to remember. The one with the least amount, 0, is C. The one with the most amount is C. The one with the most amount of flats is also C. So whenever I teach the circle of fifths, I always do this. Because I like to go down here, because everybody's like, oh, I'm scared of these. They have lots of black keys on the piano. I've done some experiments with teaching with, over the years, people like, oh, like after months and months, or maybe a year, depends on the age of the student, I'm like, I finally get to, today we're going to learn the C sharp scale, or the D flat scale, or the F sharp scale. All the scales around here with lots of sharps and flats. And the student's always like, it's so hard, it's so hard. Can we just go back to the G scale? The C scale is so hard. And I'm like, oh, it's not hard. It's like... And so I did an experiment where I had a brand new student, never played before, an adult student, can comprehend these things fast. And I said, okay, whole step, half step, whole step, half step is how you create a scale. And the first scale that we usually learn is the C sharp scale. Okay. So I actually taught him the C sharp scale first. And then I went to the F sharp scale. And then after months and months and months, I finally got to the C scale. He's like, the C scale is so hard. C scale is so hard. Like, oh, okay. The experiment was correct. So the lesson learned was, one's not harder than the other. If you learn the C scale first, and then a year later you learn the C sharp scale, you've been playing the C scale that whole year, and today we're going to play the C sharp scale, so you're perceiving it to be hard, but it's just not as familiar. So just think about that. Whenever you feel like, oh, this is so hard, I don't get this, I can't comprehend this, I can't get it down on my fingers, just keep that in mind. It's not really harder, you just don't know it yet. Okay? So, moving along. Now we'll just kind of go in the sequence. So, after C, what's up 5 from C? Now it's important that you count C as 1. So, C, D, E, F, G. G right there. Okay, Jeremy, what's the next one?
D.
Yeah. Wendy?
A.
Yes. Okay, so line. Okay, what about this one? Ruby. So A, B, C, D, E. Yeah. So count the starting point as 1. What's 5 from E?
B.
B. Okay, I'm gonna put another box here. B. What's 5 up from B?
It's dicey.
Yeah, this is where it gets a little different. What do you think, Jeremy?
F.
Right. Okay. So I have to stop here for a second. Now, so far, just going up the, 7 letters of the alphabet, adding 5. Simple as that, right? No big deal. But the answer is actually not F. This is 50% of the answer. The letter is right. The numbers and letters always stay consistent. They never change. That has to be F. But it's a specific F. It's actually F sharp. Okay. How can that be? F sharp. Okay. So if we look at a fifth in a little bit more detail, C to G. we see that the distance between C to G is actually 7 half steps, or some people say semitones, 7 semitones, 7 half steps. So see, this is where it can be confusing. You know, I said, oh, C to G is a fifth. C is 1, right? C is 1. C, D, E, F, G. Now, when you're counting half steps and whole steps, the starting place is not 1. It's 0. So that can be confusing, right? Maybe? Let's see if I can make it not confusing. So here you got C. Now I'm going to count the distance from C to G. So far, we've been just knowing that as a fifth. But how many half steps? How many black and white keys are there? Well, if I'm going to count C to C sharp, C to C sharp, that's 1 half step right there. I'm not counting C as 1 because I haven't moved yet. But from C to C sharp, now it's 1. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So a fifth is actually 7 half steps. So when we go from B up to F sharp, these are all 7 half steps, but it changes to black and white keys. So we got B, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, happens to be F sharp. Now if we go from F sharp up 7 half steps, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, C sharp. Any
Unique
questions?
little sound, too.
What's that?
I do, when I teach my piano students, that perfect fifth has a very unique sound. And if you play
Yeah.
like the F to B, it sounds kind of unresolved, like you used that tension release thing.
That's right. When you're playing, you should definitely play these for sure. Because you're at the, if I went from B to F, this is the sound we're looking for. So from C to G. Right, oh, right. Long time ago, they had a name for this interval. You know what it was?
Tritone.
Tritone. And there's a Latin word for it.
That's the Latin word.
Back in the day, before this was happening, so you guys familiar with Gregorian Chant?
Yes.
Yeah? Yes, Gregorian Chant is like these monks in church, they would chant. And it sounded kind of like this. It would always be in fifths. That was the first harmony that was ever used. So that was it. That was the first sort of harmony that we know in history anyways. Okay, sounds good. And then all of a sudden, if you're playing the scale, at some point, the perfect fifth is going to be broken, and you can get that sound. The sound is called a tritone. You don't need to know too much about that right now. But the name for it was the Diablos Musica. So it was the devil in music. And you'd get burned at the stake if you're composers and you put that in there. Right? It's like, oh, it's like, we want this. But also, so the monks did that, it caused huge problems, and you're in big trouble. Ironically enough, a couple hundred years later, they did it in the end of every song. So that interval was used. Mozart said, "Oh, actually, I like that. We should start using that," and they did.
Decorated it nicer.
What's that?
Decorated it nicer.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so we did all set. These all have sharps in them, right? And we're done. Beginning of C, ends in C sharp. Okay, so interesting. This has 2 names. What's the word for 2 names for 1 sound?
And harmonics.
That's right, enharmonic. So, enharmonic. So that means C sharp and D flat, 1 tone. This black key right here has 2 names. It's not just the black keys that have 2 names. Every note has 2 names. So, this is B. also C flat. You could also argue that it's also A double sharp. Why would we ever use that? There's reasons. Has anyone ever seen a double sharp in music before? Yeah? Anyone here? Double sharp looks like this. It's an X. Double flat looks like this. And so, two sharps. Sharps are a lot, let's say 100 years ago, when you're writing out a piece of music, writing out this 1,000 times is a lot harder than this. Flats are easy to write. I've written many charts in my life, and when you're doing it hundreds and hundreds of times, the charts can slow you down. And we're actually, I think I'm doing like a chart, like seminar. Written many, many of them. So, okay, back to this. So, now we're going to go back the other way in fifths. So here went C, D, E, F, G. Now we're going to go C, B, A, G, F. C, so this is F. Now, if I were to do these three first, before I showed you anything here, I was like, okay, there's C, and then we go to the left is F, and we go to the right is G, and we start here. And I didn't even mention this. A few minutes later, I finally get over to here, and once again, it's an F. You're like, well, we already have an F, so this cannot be F. But the letter has to stay the same. You can never change the letter. So we come to the conclusion that it has to be sharp or flat. We go up 7 semitones or half steps. We conclude that it has to be sharp. Okay, so let's go each person. Can you tell me what the next one is? So Jeremy up first. So F.
Up 5.
Down 5. So this is up 5, and this is down 5.
B.
Right. B. Okay. Oh, you already have B though. We can't have
B flat.
B flat. But maybe it was B sharp. Why do you think it's not B sharp?
Backwards.
Yeah, if we're going down 7 half steps, C, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 is indeed F. F down 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 is a B flat. Well, you got the letter right. B flat. Also looks like an A sharp, but we know it has to be a B because B is 5 letters down from F. So B, 5. Yeah, you always have to keep the letters and the numbers in order. Okay. Let's see. Okay, Wendy.
E flat.
E flat. Good. Okay, Ruby, what do you think?
A
Good. A
flat.
flat. And
B flat.
D flat. All right, we have one more. Jeremy.
B.
D flat. We're good.
Oh, D flat.
Down 5.
G.
Good. We already have a G,
G flat.
so it's G flat. Then we end on C flat. Okay. So, how many major scales do we have? I have a trick question. How many notes are on the piano? How many different notes? How many notes right here? How many notes in music?
In a scale or on the whole piano?
In the chromatic scale. There's 12, right? So we got C beside these 2 black keys. We got C beside these 2 black keys. So, then we repeat. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So there's 12 major scales. There's actually a few more than that. What can that be? How many major scales are here? It's 12, 13, 14, 15.
The enharmonics.
Yeah, so with the enharmonics, there's actually 15 major scales. Major scales. 15. What? How can that be? There's only 12 notes. Like I said, these enharmonics. Now, for those classical people out there, has anyone ever heard of the system called the Temperate System? The Temperate System is what we use today. On the piano, on the guitar, and every instrument is tempered. Okay, so what does that mean? That's a big, huge explanation. But it means this is the way the piano works. You know how the piano is shaped like this? The grand piano, right? And a guitar has frets. And these frets get thinner, thinner, and thinner, and thinner. But they start off fat here. They get thinner, 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 right? Why isn't it like this? Why isn't every fret the same thickness?
Not linear.
Yeah, has to do with the harmonic overtone series. So, and that's a huge study. And I'm going to kind of briefly go into that in sound design. But what it means is, has anyone ever played trumpet before? Trumpet in high school band? Anyone ever play trombone? No. But you know what trumpet looks like, right? It has 3 valves. How can you play all the notes with 3 valves? Right?
Or you push your lips.
Yeah, exactly. So I used to play trumpet in high school band, and C, open C was open. You blow a little bit faster, all of a sudden the note would pop up to another note, and you didn't have to move your fingers. It'd pop up to G. And then all of a sudden you blow a little faster, and it pops up to C, the occupier. You blow a little faster, it pops up to E. So it's popping up to all these notes, and you haven't done anything except move the air faster, and you pinch your lips. That's interesting. So there's a sequence that happens. It's not random by any means. And that sequence is the same. Here's another example. If you take a guitar string, anyone play guitar or ever touched a guitar? Right? Take a guitar string, and you divide it in half. So let's say you play this one as, let's say it's C. It's easy to understand. So you get the big C string here, and then you put your finger directly halfway. You play it, and it goes up an octave to C. You divide it, you take this, and then you go half again. And that goes up to G. And you go again. Keep on dividing. Divide by 3, divide by 4, divide by 5. That sequence is exactly the same as when the trumpet goes higher and higher as you blow faster. It's called the Overtone Series. And so, if we followed the Overtone Series, which is the natural state of music, universal, throughout the universe, this is how the vibrations work, tones and everything, the piano should be shaped like this. Right angle. But what we've done, like I said, it's kind of such a big topic. What happened in the natural system is that, say, a major third. Sounds nice. Let's say, for example, maybe the major third sounds nice in C. But all of a sudden, we move to a major third in a different key, like A flat, but it won't be called A flat, it would be a different system. It would sound bad, it would be out of tune. So what would happen is you could only play in certain keys, and keys that would generally have like what they call a sweet third, so where the third would sound nice. So it's very problematic. So someone came up with the idea is you take an octave, and you divide it equally by 12. And so each note in between these octaves is equally out of tune relative to the harmonic overtone series. And so they discovered that several hundred years ago, before the piano and the harpsichord was invented, and they called it the temperate system. Now, Bach wrote a piece called the Well-Tempered Clavier, and to celebrate the temperate system, what an amazing thing, the temperate system. So he actually wrote a song in all 15 keys. I'm sure you guys must play this, right? What's the prelude? Someone must know prelude in C. I should know it. Remember how it goes.
It's the first one in C. I know exactly which one you're talking about. Oh, that's it.
example, if I wrote the chords out, it has some like Fly Me to the Moon chord progressions in there for sure. It's going down in fifths a lot. But he actually wrote songs in C sharp and C flat as well. He wrote a prelude and an etude. So if you ever really want to get into all 12 or 15 scales, really get to know them, and you're tired practicing your scales, learn all of those. Learn Bach's piece. Okay, so far so good? Any questions? Pretty easy, right? Takes a while to sort of get this. Okay, so this is only one part. Now this is how the circle of fifths work. Now, when you're learning a scale, figuring it out, you have to ask yourself two questions. Is how many and which ones? Okay, so who can play all 12 or 15 scales? No? Okay. So when you're learning how to do it, this is one case where I would say don't learn by ear. Now, it's kind of such an irony that like when I teach students at first, this is what I get. It's like, oh, can you play a D major scale? Yeah, I think so. Yeah, let me try. No? Yeah? No? Yeah? No? And it's like this thing is like, okay, well, you're doing it by ear, like really poorly, but they can figure out, most people can figure that out by ear, right? But what's the problem with doing it that way? It takes a long time. You're practicing lots of mistakes. So like, now the way our brains work is, when we're learning these things, scales and theory and whatnot, you're learning a new piece of music, maybe you have a teacher that told you this before. You want to try to practice, not try, you want to play it and practice it perfect the first time. Okay? Because you're essentially programming your brain like a computer. I've seen it many times when someone practices a mistake, they come back to me over the next week and say, okay, I got the song, like, oh, you made a mistake there, it's actually this. Like, oh, okay. And they play it, and they make a mistake again. I'm like, I just told you it was a mistake. Oh, I know, hold on. They do it again and again and again. Like, I have to go back and sort of deprogram their brain to play the right note. It's really, really hard to get that to go back in time and deprogram. If you practice everything, like something for every day for a week, it's really hard to fix that mistake. So, don't do it by ear. Do it by math. Ear comes later, okay? I guess that's the way I learned. You know, typically as a piano player, you learn classical music at first. It sounds cool as guitar, we can listen to stuff on the radio and practice, but you know, they play classical. And a lot of classical teachers, they're really, they're very focused on the reading, right? It's all about the reading, and they don't, for the most part, it's reading and interpretation of classical music. They go much beyond that. So, anyways, doing it this way, it seems like a long process. Say, oh, I want to play the D flat scale. Let me figure this out. It takes a couple minutes. But do it every time. You get really fast at it. Okay, so this answers the question of how many. So how many what? How many sharps or flats? Okay. So I say, oh, I'll play the D flat scale. Okay, well, I know it has flats because it's called the D flat scale. How many? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. D flat has 5 flats. Okay, so that's only half the question. Which ones are they? Okay, so we'll talk about that in just a sec. So D flat has 5 flats. Now, how this can be applied on a professional gig, let's say. So I play gigs where the band leader, let's say is the bass player, or the drummer, keyboard player, whatever. And I'm subbing in on a gig, right? Never played with these guys before, and I get thrown into this gig. And a lot of bands play these standard songs in different keys. Depends on what singer they have, if they can sing high or low, male, female. Hello.
Hi, he's checking in.
Oh, okay. So on a gig, what they'll do is they'll go like this. Oh, we're playing whatever song it is, and they'll go like this for 5. Okay. So 5 like this would be 5 flats or 5 sharps, right? Let's say you're playing a song that's really loud. You can't say, oh, we're playing in D flat, and you want to look professional. You just say, okay, 5 flats. You're like, okay, I got it, right? This thing's down 5 flats. And then right away, oh, 5 flats. I know 5 flats is D flat. So if you're in a pro situation, chances are most musicians will know how to do that. 5 sharps. Oh, I know 5 sharps is B. Okay, so this needs to be internalized in your brain. And don't try to think, oh, this is a huge rote memorization project. It's not really. Like I said, as long as you can count to 5 and know the first 7 letters of the alphabet, you can do this. And so what I get my students to do is I get just write this out every day. Figure it out and kind of do the same way I did. You got the C's, then you got the C sharp and C flats. You get kind of like the sort of the tough ones out of the way. Then you go around to G. Okay, so half the question's done. Which ones are they? Okay. And the answer to that has to be with the order of sharps and flats. Okay. So here's the order of sharps. It's always the same and it never changes. Okay. Order of sharps. Okay. So the first sharp, the order of sharps is F sharp. It's always F sharp. So every scale that has a sharp in it has an F sharp. It's the first one every time. So, this just happens to go in fifths as well. So, what's 5 up from F sharp?
C sharp.
C sharp, yeah. What's 5 up from C? G. And it has to be G sharp because it's the order of sharps, right? G sharp. Well, we're just using the circle of fifths again. It's all fifths. So, D. There it is. F, C, G, D, A, E, E, F sharp. Goes around again. Round and around. Okay. Now, when I was a kid, we learned a little acronym for this. It's different, depends where you come from. To help us memorize, like I said, don't feel like, oh, it's all this memorization. It's just the letter 5, right? You go, oh, what's the second sharp? F, G, A, B, C. Oh, C. What's the next one after that? C, D, E, F, G. But that can kind of slow you down. In the meantime, that acronym that I learned was Father Charles goes down and ends battle. Did you learn that one?
No, I didn't learn that one.
No?
I didn't have an acronym for that. I have acronyms for, the line and space
Yeah.
notes, but.
Every good boy
nothing.
does one, right?
Yeah,
Deserves
small cows eat
all
grass.
cats eat grass. And so, the one I learned was Father Charles goes down and ends battle. So Father Charles, this priest, goes down this hill and ends the battle. And I think the reason why it's pretty common is because you can say it backwards and it kind of makes sense. Battle ends and down goes Charles' father. Father Charles goes down and ends battle. Battle ends and down goes Charles' father. So the order of flats, okay, is backwards. So every scale that has a flat in it always starts with B flat. So B flat, battle ends and down goes Charles. So E flat, E flat. What's the next one? Ruby. So you can look here. A flat, yeah. Wendy, what's the next one?
D flat.
D flat. Jeremy.
G flat.
Good.
C flat.
Yes. Ruby again. One more.
F.
Yes, good. Good. There we go. A flat. So, usually what I'll do here, put sharps, 1 sharp, 2 here, 3 here. See, sharps, such a pain to write. 5 sharps, I go to 5 times sharp. F sharp, 6 times sharp. C sharp, 7 sharps, remember? 7 sharps.